Hey everybody, it's Stephen Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And where are we? We're in a glass case.
Yeah, you never put your hand up. I think it's
You can't. I can't touch your hand.
Well,
otherwise...
no, but you put it up against this.
No,
this
it's
is the recording box. It's the line between our webcams, and then it's
no.
Crossed over.
Like that bit in Back to the Future 2 where they touch and then the universe explodes.
It would be funny if when I put my hand past the line, it disappeared, we weren't actually together and we were just green screening it. Anyways, yes, this is episode 229 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. It has been a hot moment since we recorded together. But we're here. But don't worry, there's still more content to come where we're not.
More content.
Yeah. What are we talking about today? Merry Christmas, everyone, also.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Kwanzaa. All the holidays.
Yes, Yule.
Happy Easter.
Let's get that one out of the way.
Yeah, I'm ready. Because we won't record again Easter.
Don't say such a thing.
We're talking about... Look at the title. The titles.
They're also on my screen right now.
No, because I don't see note spoilers. Reporting live from Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pronounced Sinai. I've been saying it wrong.
I hear people say equally both ways.
And a dose of virtual reality.
Yes.
Oh, there goes my phone.
We're also talking about
the predictions for... I checked what album number, but my phone is now on the ground.
Album 75, I believe. So, yes, that's what we're talking about, getting into. Finally, it is December 27th, and we're finally going to talk about the January and February episodes for this year. We're really good at this. We've been doing this podcast for 10 and a half years, folks.
Nobody's doing it like us, and maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yes.
It is 75, you were correct.
So, first episode, episode 900. Oh, also, I noticed when I was looking at these episodes for these 12 episodes for 2024, they have changed the numbering scheme where all previous years with the AIOC, it's been the 6 spring episodes and then all 12 episodes for the year and then the 6 fall episodes at the end in terms of ordering number.
Okay.
And as of this year, it switched to the first 6 episodes for the year and then the 6 episodes from the spring album and then the 6 episodes for the back half of the year and then 6 episodes from the fall album. Is that right? I might have mix that up and it's the spring album and then 6, but either way the point is the 12 episodes of the AIOC season are no longer 12 in a row. They're now split 6 and 6 and with the alternating with the seasons. So that's interesting for those who are really hung up on episode numbers. Yeah. So episode 958, reporting live from Mount Sinai, written by Abigail Geiger. As there are so many episodes these days.
This is Ted Humphries' episode.
Yeah, we got a real old man episode today.
Yeah.
Real old man hour.
Old man hour.
Very timely Keith Ferguson episode.
Ted Humphries is Keith Ferguson, my beloved. I was listening to these 2 episodes while beating Kingdom Hearts fights, including a fight that is done by a character he voices, which took me a really long time to beat, actually.
But you did it.
I did it.
Doing Pro Codes fights against Marluxia while listening to him talk about hip new technology.
Me being very attracted and loving for his Kingdom Hearts character. And also, I really like Ted Humphries in this episode. So, speaking of... so this episode is about Ted Humphries and Zoe going on an imagination station adventure together, which I prefer so much more than just like kids radio, them doing like a fictional like Mount Sinai report.
That's more fun to have someone be in.
Yeah, I'm always down for an Imagination Station episode, especially if it's an adult who has not been in the Imagination Station before. I love to see them just be distressed.
They fortunately allowed Ted to pick up on things faster. Like, I thought they were really gonna prolong the whole episode, him like being clueless about
No, he was actually
on.
doing a pretty good job at like hanging in there. It's because he's hip. It's because he's hip and he knows what's
so what happens in this episode?
So he wants to do a news report on, he's been doing news reports on, I think it was tragedy.
Well, big moments in human history.
Yeah, big moments in human history. Most of them were like tragic moments or like great moments of like accomplishment. And Whit was saying like, you should do one on a moment of faith. So he does a Imagination Station adventure specifically programmed with Ted and Zoe in mind. And
he was coming to report on the Imagination Station because he was talking about like VR.
Yeah.
We literally had 2 VR episodes in a row.
We did.
Well,
it's the it's the old man gamer episode, Devin.
I was gonna say they did in the next episode they did describe it as AR, but then it feels a lot more like they were talking about VR, and by it feels like, I mean, only makes sense if they were talking about it as VR and not AR. It's also in the title of the episode.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know the difference between VR and AR.
So augmented reality means that you're still seeing your surroundings, but things are being
Google Glass.
Exactly.
Basically.
Google Glass is an example. It's you're seeing your surroundings,
VR then,
but it's adding things on top of the existing environment. VR is like we are creating a wholly new environment independent of what is around you.
How about this?
Like Pokemon Go, when you like hold it up and you see like Pikachu standing on your desk, that's AR.
How about this? VR doesn't exist in Odyssey, but AR now does. So it's basically like the opposite. I hope VR does end up existing, and it just means the opposite.
I mean, we've heard them talk about VR in Odyssey before. Even in Novacom, they're like, "Wow, the Novacom Kids Center has like this big like VR like asteroid fighting thing and stuff like that."
I think that Whit was like, "Wow, I created AR," and they're like, "That's not what AR is." And he's like, "I created it.
I took reality and I augmented it." What are you talking about?
I connected the dots. You didn't connect it. I connected them. So Whit gives like the advice, like, pay attention to these things. He tells Zoe to look out for like a specific word when it is mentioned. Maseba, thank you. She doesn't know what it means. He does not tell her, as Whit does. Cryptic man nonsense.
It'd be funny if she was like, by the way, I speak Hebrew fluently, so awkward for you.
They end up in a adventure that's largely centering around a couple's experience during like the Israelites traveling with Moses through the desert and Mount Sinai, stuff with like the golden calf and just like that time period.
Emmett and Libby.
Yes, and it is non-linear, so they jump back and forth a couple times. Libby is pregnant. Emmett is the leader of the Levi clan. Levites.
Was he the leader of the Levi? Well, I guess he was a leader. Well, was he the leader of the whole tribe of Levi, or was it just a family within the tribe of Levi?
I wasn't. I might have to.
I was unclear on that because I also don't know if he. Because
either way, he was a leader.
There's a number of
part of the Levites.
uprisings in Exodus with like specific people named at the helm, and so I figured Zimri and Emma are probably people in there, but I didn't go and do all the research for
I assumed they were made up. But so it's basically like, their experiences with like when manna's falling down and how they reacted to that and what they did during like the golden calf scenario and when like Moses hit the...
It's the battle where the priest holds
when he's holding the staff over his head.
But I was doing like a gang beast pose.
When I said Moses hit and then you did that, I thought you were going to go like, Moses hit the dab or...
No, it was kind of like a field goal sort of thing.
When Moses hit like that stone and then like water comes out.
And he wasn't supposed to.
And so basically,
which is not relevant to this episode and is not addressed, but
we actually talked about the mana thing. I don't know if we talked about it on the Oddcast, but you and I definitely talked about it.
What about the birds?
Like, no, with like don't collect.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Was that in an episode that we were talking about that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it. I want to say it was like when we were talking about the Ark of the Covenant or something.
Probably.
Because that has a jar of mana in it.
Yeah, that sounds right. So
and you're like, why didn't it go bad? Because it goes bad the next day. I'm like, yeah, but it's not like
magic.
It's not like it expires in precisely this amount of time, because it goes bad the next day unless it's the day before the Sabbath, in which case it lasts 2 days. So it's like being very specifically
It has like
controlled.
A really long best before date.
It's being specifically controlled by God based on the circumstances. So.
It's like the Bernard line. It was like, yeah, it'll go bad tomorrow. And
it's tomorrow. If yesterday's today is tomorrow's yesterday, then and then I may never see you again.
So the rock thing,
the
Meseba is basically like, I don't remember what it translates to specifically, but it's basically like
the actual word I don't remember.
Was it Libby? What's her name?
Uh-huh.
She takes a rock and then she makes like a little rock pile and she adds another rock to it every single time God does a miracle. And
I mean, everyone does this, like, you know, it's a whole thing.
I didn't know.
We should read the Bible sometime.
So Emmett's kind of like meh on God. He's like, I don't
I think
know.
it was more on Moses.
Yeah, on Moses. And there's like this whole thing in the episode. It's like, should we trust Moses? Should we not trust Moses? And then it all culminates in the golden calf and like Ted Humphries and Zoe seeing all these experiences. And I did like Ted reacting to it. And he's like, okay, I know that all of this was like a really long time apart for you when all these things happened, but I saw them all in very quick succession, so I have a more informed opinion specifically on just like remembering all the big things that happened to you, and I think you should just take a little walk down memory lane.
He's like, you seem to have a very skewed memory of events.
Yeah,
and to be fair,
I liked that. I was like, he knows he's biased. Yeah,
I mean, and it is true, obviously, like when we do remember things spread out over the course of time, we do remember them with a lot of bias that's usually skewed towards like remembering bad things
or remembering really good things and not really remembering like the
but specifically you're more likely to remember like bad things than good things because you spend more time like stewing on them or like thinking about them, which I mean that all comes back around to Whit's whole theme about how when we think about history we tend to highlight like moments of great tragedy, or when we're looking at the news and looking at things now, we talk about, you know, the bad things happening more and can forget to highlight good things that are happening.
Yeah, I like how Ted Humphries is like, Zoe, we can't interfere. We need to be objective reporter. I can't talk. Objective reporters. And she's just like, no, I don't want to. And he's like, oh, okay.
It was very much like, they're like, he's always being confusing and inconsistent and we can't trust him. And Ted's like, brings in the receipts and he's like, okay, but like, here's timestamps. What about these events? And they're like, yeah, I guess. But he's like, and what was he like inconsistent, unfaithful? They're like, I mean, there was like, no, you know, and you know how that is, right? Where all of a sudden someone's like, you feel a way, and then they ask you to like name specific circumstances.
Name
like,
a woman, and you're like,
Exactly. Yeah. So.
I also, Ted Humphries in this episode is trying to be really hip and cool, so he has a lot of slang. Except for, I didn't actually get annoyed by it, which I usually do by that kind of thing.
It's like they only played it up outside the imagination station really at the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
They still gave him kind of like a bumbliness to what's going on at the beginning of the episode, and fortunately they let him catch on to what was going on very quickly, which is really important.
He's competent in this episode, which is really nice.
This is really important because this was an unusually complicated adventure.
Yeah.
In terms of like, if you had like an adult who started like a normal adventure already, the way that this one started out, they would have been like confused the whole time. And I was like, oh, I hope they don't do this bit the whole time where it was like, oh, what amazing graphics and like, who this is what we call a non-playable character.
When he said NPC, I was just like, okay, don't say what it stands for. And then he was like, that means non-playable character. I was like, I hate you.
And then when I realized, and he's like, some sort of political intrigue. I should intervene in their culture. You stay out here, Zoe. And then when it skips and it goes back in time, I was like, oh no, he's never gonna. And then it kept jumping around, but he as fast as Zoe did, like was like, oh, we went back in time. Oh, we went forward in time. I thought he was really going to, like, hammer down on, like, not listening to what Zoe was trying to tell him the whole episode and was, like, really going to be annoying about it. And he wasn't, and I'm really thankful for that.
And Zoe was actually the one who was like, oh, what? Oh, we're back in time. And he was just, like, treating it like it was normal. He's like, yes, I expected that we'd be back in time. Like he's Columbo or something.
Yeah, he's like, I've been around reporting before. We've all been in these sorts of circumstances.
My wife really likes these AR machines.
Yes.
And one more thing. Did Moses ever... I can't help but notice that you put this pile of rocks here. Could you explain what that means? I liked this episode a lot.
I really was not expecting Ted Humphries' Imagination Station adventure.
I wasn't expecting to like this episode because I'm kind of like middling on Ted Humphries. And so when he was like, oh, I'm gonna do slang, I was like, oh no. And then he was like, I'm gonna go in the Imagination Station. I was like, oh, I hope you have the worst time. Because that's my reaction to any adult who goes in there for the first time.
Ted's report is gonna be so hip with this slang in it.
I think another reason why I'm cool with him doing the slang thing is because, like, Ted Humphries, at least in my opinion, has so little of a personality that, like, I'm totally cool with this.
We can throw him a bone.
It doesn't feel like it's going against anything or like him being out of character.
Uh-huh.
He's just like, he's like, look at this teenage girl. She's the coolest person I know. I want to impress her.
It makes sense to me that the Imagination Station would draw more general news coverage as VR in general becomes like more of a household item and news topic. Because even though I feel like we're like 3 to 5 years past the big hump, on like VR really expanding in the market, and it's just kind of like flatlined at this point.
Until Dawn VR truly was a pinnacle and milestone.
Like when Oculus came out and the HTC Vive and stuff like that, like I feel like
what's that one where
PSVR?
No, you like move hot something.
Super hot.
I
know, but I'm saying consoles.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was thinking games.
No, like those all released, like had their full releases around the same time, and that was a number of years ago, and it hasn't, and I feel like this was pretty well predicted perfectly by most people in the industry that like it was not going to be the next stage of like home gaming that was going to replace existing consoles, and is going to be more of like you go to a place to do VR in the same way you do like an escape room. Like you go to an arcade and they might have an elaborate VR setup, but it's really still not as accessible to home use, because even though you can buy it and it's not insanely expensive for like a Vive or an Oculus, it's still, on top of the headset, requires like a really high-end PC to be able to run them without lag. And most importantly for most people, you need a really large open space in your house for most games to be able to like play them comfortably without smashing into furniture, and real estate is not cheap. Most people cannot have a dedicated large space in their house in order to like maintain that, which is one of the reasons why VR hasn't kind of like become the next step in gaming. It's more like an adjacent step to...
Also, VR can make you nauseous really easily.
Exactly. has a lot of augmented impact of motion sickness for a lot of people.
Yeah, and
so,
if you have like epilepsy, it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, because any flashing lights are more encompassing than they would be on a TV. So even though we're a little past, I feel like, kind of the big hump, especially where like news is going to be talking about it, like when it's, coming out and stuff initially, but it makes sense that it being more in the public mind would generate more interest and people being like, hey, what's that thing that Wits had for 30 years going on, 35 years? That seems related, right? And
I think that like this news report is going to bring even more attention to the Imagination Station from around the world, which, as we know, has never had any bad consequences. No. Never, ever, ever.
It's also like, as I was listening to this, I was like, is this a two-parter? Because the next episode is called Dose of Virtual Reality. So
that's fair. I didn't even think about that because I forgot what the next episode
as I was looking, I was like, I guess I'll just have to see if it's a two-parter or it's a really weird spacing of like when they scheduled episodes that they put these back to back. Because I'm like, Imagination Station Adventures often 2 parts. This would be a weird title if it didn't focus on anything about Moses or Exodus or anything like that. But actually, it seemed too similar to not be completely unrelated, and then they were.
The Odyssey team actually contacted me, and they wanted me to let you know that every episode from this point on is about gaming and gamers.
Finally, I finally feel represented on Adventures in Odyssey.
We were so worried we were gonna have to stop listening to the show because it didn't have that gamer rep that we needed.
But fortunately, we do, and we'll talk about that later. Also, speaking of the pacing of this season, when I was looking at the season again, as I was starting to listen to this, I was like, they literally this year, they're doing an episode called The Show Must Go On. And I was like, haven't we already had that? And no, we haven't. But 2 years ago.
Isn't there an album called that?
It's almost called that, right?
Okay,
what is the title of album? Is it 61? Let's put on a show. Yeah, very similar. But The Snow Must Go On was an episode 2 years ago. And so I was like, that's a little weird that The Snow Must Go On was an episode before The Show Must Go On. That one came before the other, but also they were so close to each other in coming out. Kind of confusing, but not that relevant. Anyways, so they go into the Imagination Station. Wit tells Zoe to keep an eye out for understanding what a Meseba is. They arrive, and Ted's all like, "Woo, technology!" And they go through the scene. Libby's pregnant. There's a council.
And then she's not. And then she is again.
Well, there's a snip, snap, snip, snap. There's a council of elders. And Ted's like, "I'll go in and speak to them. Zoe, you stay out here." When he said that,
I was like, oh no.
Zoe, you stay out here with the pregnant woman. I'm going to go talk to the men.
Very big Eugene back to Bethlehem energy.
And he comes in and they're talking. He's like, "Excuse me, everyone. I'm Ted Humphreys. I'm from the tribe of...
Excuse me, I'm white.
I'm from the tribe of Channel 10 News. Please explain to me everything that's going on like I'm 5. And when the scene changes and they go back in time and they're separated, so he's like, "Why does the Imagination Station always separate people?" I thought that was really funny. I'm like, she's a victim of narrative structure. She's like, why must this always happen, that we get split into 2 parallel storylines that will move alongside each other and reach a common moral conclusion?
I was thinking in this episode, I hope the Imagination Station has like warnings on the outside for like kids who can get like a lot of sensory
triggers. I would hope so. I would hope that they, you warn someone if it's their first time. Like,
I was also thinking, like, it's kind of amazing that we've only seen, as far as I can remember, 2 instances in the series run of people having panic attacks while in the Imagination Station.
Maybe 3.
I'm thinking of Hide and Seek, which that episode probably gave me a panic attack when I was little. I didn't know what panic attacks were.
It represents it, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, that episode can be very intense.
Yes.
And then Alex, when he got stuck.
In Breaking Point, yeah.
And then, like, Wit and Eugene have freaked out in
That's
it
true.
before.
That's
but
true.
I wouldn't say panic attack.
No, and then I was also kind of thinking of Kelly in the Imagination Station Revisited, like, at the end as it closed.
But, like,
That was kind of more of like a shock and then like a quiet catatonia, but...
Yeah, those 3 instances, correct me if I'm wrong, were all of the imagination station glitching out.
Yes.
So, like, no one's ever had a panic attack that we've seen.
Wit's covering up the truth.
From just, like, the imagination station just being, like, normal craziness.
Oh, and we're also excluding anything related to Rydell revelations and how they
That
made
doesn't count.
Miss Mado think that she was being drowned alive.
That doesn't count.
They're literally psychologically torturing her, like the actual ways that people are like, you know, in the future,
we're feeling a little silly that day.
And this was Wit and Emily condoned usage.
Once
too.
again, God forbid women do anything.
I don't, you know, they've said on the news before, like, imagine if we could design like immersive like VR inside your head, and then instead of putting prisoners in jail for years, you could put them inside it and make them feel like they lived 1,000 years of solitary isolation inside of their mind. And it's like,
that's the worst thing ever.
It's like, cool, that is like
that
the
definitely goes against the Geneva Convention.
The strongest possible,
for sure,
like a possible example of psychologically torturing someone in cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah,
so that's neat.
Really twisted.
And that's basically what they did to Miss Mado. Not with the time, but they're like, we're gonna put you in a mind prison and kill you inside of it.
Like I said, they're feeling a little hijinky.
Rydell Revelations is wild.
Everything Mori and Suzu do is wild.
I can't wait for the next album.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I like the format of this episode. It's a good like whistle-stop tour of the miracles and big moments of faith and lack thereof with the Hebrews, and it's like it's not even
we've never
it's not even in reverse order strictly either. Like you said,
we've never
it's
gotten
jumping
these moments in the Imagination Station in Odyssey before.
Yeah,
or just like
some of them
even
probably, but not all.
We've gotten like some of them in like tidbits. But some of them we haven't gotten before. So I liked that. I always like it when we get like new Bible stuff depicted.
I really like the theme of this episode because it's not just about like the faithfulness of God or learning about the events in Exodus in particular, but it's about the need for us to memorialize God's faithfulness and other important moments in our lives, and like the need to find ways to remember these things and hold them in our hearts so that when hard times come, you don't, like we were saying before, you don't just like only remember the bad things in the past and let it, you feel like despair and have this confirmation bias when you think about things, but that you can hold up. It's like that really cute post about the couple not wanting to propose to each other, and he's like, and I found my mad box where in the closet where I had like all the notes that we wrote each other when we were dating and like all these sweet presents we've given for each other, so that whenever we have an argument, I can go back and look at all of these things that remind me
I don't
why
think
we
I've seen that before.
Oh, it's a really funny post.
Okay.
I know it sounds really sappy when reading it. That's the sappy part. Overall, it's extremely humorous. But basically saying like, yeah, it was like a get-along box that my fiance didn't know that I had. And it's like all these like sappy reminders of why I love him. And if we get into a fight, I can go and like look through it and then remember everything. And then I can go and apologize. And that's, you know, basically, generally speaking, what a Meseba is. Where God said like everyone, every family, every household, when all of these events happen, I mean, it's not like you're really adding to the same one in place because they were moving constantly all the way across the desert, but it's like every time a great moment happens, put down a pile of stones to memorialize this place and this moment so that when people see it, you know, it's like the same wording as Passover. It's like when your descendants see this and they ask you, what are these markers, you can say, this marks the place that God did this for us, and this marks the time that God did this for us. So if each stone is commemorating something, then presumably like the first time something happened, everyone will put down one stone. The next time, everyone will be putting down two stones because they'd be in a different place by then. They're moving through the desert. But even though you're putting down two new stones, you'd remember like, oh, the first one is from this past event over there. And as you travel, as you travel these paths...
they were carrying these heavy rocks with them throughout the desert, and I was thinking, like, that doesn't sound like fun.
That doesn't sound like fun. You have to forgive your aunt for introducing your dad to to what you left your mom for. Don't carry rocks in your backpack.
And then he left that woman.
Yes, for another
also.
woman, and then
Jules.
then he married the next one, and then some other things in between, and then he married Jan and had Jules.
Yeah, and then he left her too.
Yeah.
Good job, Bill. Kendall.
Good job, Bill.
What a guy.
The point being, like, continuing on through the book of Joshua, like, so beyond Moses' death, they still construct these markers, these piles of stones as memorials. It's kind of like how at Bethel, after Jacob woke up from his dream of the angels ascending to heaven,
a rock down.
and he put a stack of rocks to commemorate the place. This is where this happened, and this is like the same thing, but it's like all of us collectively, we do a whole bunch of these. And so I never really thought about the like escalating aspect of it, but it means like if you retraced the path that they took, you would see the locations, these markers, but you would also see them like grow each time. And it's not like it's one marker at each place, right? It's like, here's 10,000 tents of families, and each one of them is like putting down a marker. So I imagine it would, probably be quite a sight to see for as long as, they last before getting knocked over and scattered and whatnot. Reasonable, obviously, like Meseba is the Hebrew term. They just call them like make a marker of stones in the English Bible, which is why Zoe doesn't know the word. But yeah, I really like that lesson about like, it is important mentally for us to like, I think, and I know psychologically that is one of the important things about journaling. It's one of the reasons that it's good for your mind to practice like mindfulness and reflect on things that happen, because otherwise as time passes, it's like I could name good things and bad things that happened today, maybe in the last week, but unless you kind of really revisit memories and concretely like compartmentalize in your brain and like, oh, this is what happened in October, this is what happened in 2021, you don't really remember them unless there's like a really key, so like, I had a baby in that year, or I was in grade 11 that year. You think back and it's like, I don't, and we really have seen this in the last couple of years because of the effect of the pandemic on people and people not being able to have a lot of new experiences for a long span of time, not being able to go on vacations or meet new people and stuff like that. A lot of people had a very similar day-to-day structure for a very long period of time, and now people talk about like this just big blurry gap in their memories and being like, yeah, 2020 to like 2022 was just this big blur, and I don't know when things happen, and it feels like all that time is just washed out of my brain, because your brain doesn't make new memories well, isn't growing new connections well if you're not having new experiences. And so that's why revisiting these things, helping to cement in our minds like, yes, this is what happened. I'm remembering the good things God did for me. I'm remembering the sad things that happened and how I grew from them. Revisiting these ideas, having ways to memorialize them, praying about them, talking to people about them, journaling them, talking to a therapist, putting down a stone marker outside of your tent. All of these things help to cement these ideas in our mind and give them like a concrete form, literally, but also in our minds, so that when we think back on things, they were like, what has God done for us? And then when Zoe points to the rock, she's like, what's this rock for? What's this rock for? What's this rock for? And because they had these markers, they could remember what each one was and have like a direct association to be able to recall those important events. And I think that is something that really does apply. So I like that idea in its relevance on top of like, I think that gives a good like kind of personal relevance to younger listeners, on top of like the way that Whit presents it from kind of like a news and the way that we think about history example. I think the way that we apply it to our lives at any age is applicable in that way.
I am going to give this episode a 4.3 out of 5, which you might think that's kind of high, but this episode was very fun and I had a good time listening to it, and I liked the characters a lot.
I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I enjoyed having Ted Humphries there. I really liked that they were able to like let him be like, oh, I'm being goofy, I'm a stupid adult, haha, this is what we made fun of SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents for being in the Truth Chronicles, but also we do it because it's just, you know, it's a funny trope to be like, this, thank goodness this kid is here who understands what's going on, not like these old adults who can't pick up new tricks.
I like Ted Humphries because, yeah, he's comedic relief and he has goofy moments, but he is quite competent.
Yes.
When he needs to be.
I liked that they were like...
I like that in a character.
I like that they were like, oh, we can throw these jokes in here, but when you put him in his element, like, he actually figures stuff out enough that he is not getting on our nerves otherwise, with being like, I don't understand anything that's happening. It's always
wasn't
like...
annoying in this episode at any point, and it would have been so easy for him to be.
It's where it felt like it was going to be going, where it's always like, this and this is happening, and he's like, don't be silly, Zoe. Clearly you don't know anything.
Yeah, woman, am I right?
Children. Yeah.
Women, children.
Exactly. The worst combination.
Teenage girls.
You don't know anything. I'm a man. And that's what I was expecting, and it's not what we got, and I'm really glad for that. Like I said, I enjoyed the structure. I like episodes where we get to play around with time stuff. I liked how Libby's pregnancy became like their litmus stone of the timeline of events, where they're like, oh, there's Libby. I can see how far along she is in pregnancy and use that to like carbon date if we move forward or backwards in the timeline.
She's super pregnant. We must be forward in time.
Yeah. But then, baby's gone. But then, spoiler alert, it's not.
She's still pregnant.
I liked that, and like I just talked a bunch about the theme. I think that it has very relevant applications from a faith and just from a general secular perspective, like psychologically, emotionally, for people of all ages. So.
Next episode, let's go.
Good stuff. And in the video documentary, Bob is being a news anchor, and they talk to the crew and the fans about what exactly do you think the Imagination Station is.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, we have a whole episode about that is as correct as it was as it was when we made it 9 years ago.
Not much has changed with the Imagination Station in that time.
It really hasn't.
So it's pretty much the same. They haven't even remodeled it.
They've said new things about it that have all only explicitly confirmed the things that we said in that episode. Literally 9 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. I think we only did 6 months in. Anyways, they do some fake commercials because it's like a TV broadcast. A crew member talks about his experience with COVID in 2020, where he got hospitalized and intubated and was in a coma for weeks and then got a tracheotomy, and how that went in terms of coming to terms with how his faith and belief in God's faithfulness factored into struggling with all these difficulties. The web content, specifically the part where it talks about the verse for the episode, it talks about how Ted Humphries is cheugy, and they're like, hey kids, are you familiar with the term cheugy? Let us explain it to you. Adventures in Odyssey is going to tell me what cheugy means and say that Ted Humphries is that, but it's not so bad because we can't all be completely hip all the time because society moves so fast. And I'm like, my mind is being exploded right now that Adventures in Odyssey is like, hey kids. The early episodes where the kids are unironically saying radical, and now they're like, we're going to make sure you guys know what cheugy means. And I'm like, this is wild.
What does that mean?
Cheugy is a slang term. It kind of became notable. I mean, honestly, it didn't last for long. I've
never heard that word in my life.
It was not really big, and it died out pretty quickly. Maybe 2 years ago. Okay. I saw some people note it as the only slang word invented by white people. Which might be why it died so fast and why it's such a weird sounding word. But it's
it looks wrong.
we finally came up with one slang term that was not appropriated from black people. It basically means someone who is usually used to describe older millennials who are hip, but what was hip 10 years ago, and it's oh, you haven't really caught up with trends. It's kind of cringy in a oh, you're still wearing 2012 fashion and sharing impact font memes from 2015 from Tumblr screen posts.
Gotcha.
kind of thing. It's like, oh, you would have been hip, but you're like 3 years too late on like what you're doing with it, kind of thing. Like I said, Tip is almost exclusively aimed at like older millennials who are still like trapped in an era of fashion and stuff that is like just a little
outdated.
bit past.
It just means outdated.
Exactly. And the term itself, literally, I feel like was around for like a month before.
The term itself is outdated. How appropriate.
And that was kind of the thing. It's funny. I think one of the recent Pokemon games had this word in it. I want to say either Alex or Sage like was like, look at this, and they were like talking to an NPC in one of the Pokemon games on the Switch, and the character asked like a multiple choice question, and the correct answer to the question about slang was cheugy. I was like, they can put that in a Pokemon game? That's insane.
That's illegal.
That's super weird. So yeah, seeing that on the webquest, being like, do you kids know what cheugy means? I also think, so you know how there's the YouTube videos where you like look up how to pronounce a word?
Yeah.
And it's just like, usually it's just a computer reading out the word a couple times.
It usually does not help.
Yes, exactly.
If it's a computer, that is.
This was like a year ago, maybe more. It was, I would say, after the peak of this word. Michael Jones was talking in a Let's Play about, for some reason, he saw like a video of like, I think he was like this like an Indian man who had kind of like a demure demeanor, who would like read and give like a sample example sentence of words that were slang specifically, I think. And he's like, I saw the video for cheugy, and the way that he said it was wild, because it was like, cheugy, cheugy. This person who is behind on fashion is so cheugy. And so every time I hear the word, I think about the vowels like that, where it's like, cheugy, in this like weird computerized kind of way.
Let's talk about the next episode, Devin.
Anyways, that's all I have to say about this episode. Yes, and let's talk about more VR. Okay, now, episode 959, Dose of Virtual Reality, written by Bob Hoose.
We got Molly back. We got her back.
Yeah.
I like Molly so much. I like Molly.
Me when I'm
when
I'm a 17-year-old rich trust fund girl.
Me when I'm Giovanni in Epithet Erased. That's the name of the boy who made her, who's like, congratulations, little girl, you've been promoted to boy. That girl's name is Molly.
Oh, okay. And he does a lot of like
legal
recreational drugs.
No, the main character in that series' name is Molly. Everyone go watch Epithet Erased. So this episode is about Molly again, who is Pullhouse's granddaughter, and it has her, and it has Pullhouse, and it has the sassy mom, who I love, and it has...
Is her mom in the episode?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot.
Yep.
I didn't put her on the character list.
Fold the laundry. Like, you know what made me real happy and listen to you is if you started folding that laundry. And it has Alison, Molly's friend.
Molly's only friend, because they exist in a bubble universe.
And Alison's TikTok dad, who I thought, for some reason, was like actually in the last episode. It wasn't until you were talking with me that I realized he never actually talks. And the other episode he's just talked about.
Yeah.
He was exactly how I thought he would be. So he was more of a gamer than I thought he would be. I was like, oh, I know this person and I don't like this.
You don't have to call me out like that.
No, you're not like that. I was like, I've met people who are like this. And it's just people who like...
Don't worry, guys. I got this.
Being like a cool dude.
I got my wraparound shades on,
people
Matrix
who, like,
style.
Cool dude TM is their entire personality, but they're like a 40-year-old man, and you're like, oh no.
I didn't think that we were going to get Alison and Molly back.
I'm not surprised, But
I'm more
like,
surprised that we
I'll
got
say
Alison
I'm
back.
pleasantly surprised.
I thought, there's a chance we'll get
I
Molly
didn't
back.
think they would get rid of her.
No, I was like, there's maybe maybe Molly will come back. I didn't expect Alison also to come back.
They're friends.
Yeah.
So,
well, especially because it was an AIOC episode, right?
As we said before, this episode is about being a gamer and what it means to be a gamer. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, psychologically,
cardiovascularly, financially,
in all ways.
For all time, forever, amen.
This episode said cops can also be gamers, and I said, well, yes, but actually no.
Yeah, so what happens in this episode?
That sounds like something you'd read on a bumper sticker.
Not all cops, actually. Some cops can play video games.
I thought you were saying not all cops. Some cops can't play video games. They don't know how. So there's like this tournament at their school where it's like a kid and dad
and parent game. I don't think it has to be your dad.
No, I think it was...
I don't think it was gendered.
I thought it was for dads.
Was it? I don't think so. I could be wrong. I thought it was like a parent and child thing.
Only dads know how to play video games.
Yeah. But we'll allow grandparents or two kids to compete, I guess.
Yeah, but like, Alison's dad was going to be out of town, and Molly's dad passed away, and Molly's mom is doing laundry, so she couldn't help. And Alison's
my mom went out for laundry soap
11
11 years ago, never came back.
So Alison and Molly are going to play together, but Alison's grandmother is sickly, so she is out. So Molly needs a new person to play with, can't play with her mom. So she plays with Polehouse, and Polehouse is not a gamer. He doesn't know how to game. They're trying to play this game in this contest at school that was created and is VR by Wit. And Polehouse is like, oh, there's like words. Should we read these? And Molly's like, I'm someone who skips a tutorial every single time. Never talk to me again. And basically Polehouse is real bad. He don't got those jump shoes from Gloobers. He can't reach the keyboard like he's supposed to at the end of Gloobers to hit the escape key. He's bad. So Molly's like, oh, I wish someone else would help. And Alison's grandma's doing better. So Molly's like, oh, Alison can help. But Alison's dad's actually going to be in town now. And Alison's like, but like you can play with your grandpa. And Molly's like, yeah, my grandpa. And then the tournament happens. Alison's dad is like a dude bro gamer man. But he's also like has an office job or whatever and a TikTok dad. I'm like, you took like...
Pick a lane.
you combined all these different things to create the worst man I've ever seen in all my days.
And we were talking about Bill Kendall an hour ago.
We already didn't like Alison's dad, too. And he somehow got worse. I was like, oh, I wouldn't be able to be in the same room as you. I'd need to leave. But, so, and then he's like, oh, no one else needs to play. Alison and I have got this. Everyone else can pack up and go home. And I'm like, wow, every time you open your mouth, fundamentally worse. And so then the tournament starts, and Molly and Polehouse are trying to figure out what to do. And Polehouse is like, Molly, listen to me.
I've been telling you about all these signs. She's like, they don't mean anything.
And he's just like, but this one has like Bible verse, and Wit made it. What if we look at Bible and it tells us what to do? And Molly's like, that doesn't sound like a thing whoever this created the thing would be. I don't know who made this. And he's like, I do know who made this. I know their personality. I've done a psych profile on them. They're crazy. They're obsessed with the Bible. I know how to win this. And then they follow the Bible codes, and then they win. And then
the big reveal.
And then Alison's dad is just like, you know, Polehouse, if you want to game with me any day, bro, I'd love that.
It's great that he already knows Polehouse, like, as an adult in society. Yeah. I also like, because Pull House in Fishing for Gold was like, nobody can know you're my granddaughter.
Yeah.
And then
And now
he's
everyone
like, he's
knows.
showing up for a gamer competition with his granddaughter, and people who
It
know him
wasn't
are
for
seeing
her.
him.
It was for the games. It was for her. But he has this sweet moment with Molly where he talks about like how Molly's dad passed away, and Molly's mom was like, you need to step up because you are doing bad, and he's like, oh man, I am doing bad. And then
So I bought a Nintendo Switch.
He started improving, and then he reveals that he not only used to be a gamer, he is a present day gamer. He goes on stakeouts and he plays Tears of the Kingdom on his Switch.
Literally, I'm like, if he's playing it on...
He's going home. He's on break watching Brian David Gilbert's Unraveled, where he cooks every single dish from Zelda.
If he is like passing time on stakeouts with handhelds, yeah, you know he has like all 600 stars and moons in Super Mario Odyssey collected. Like,
Full House said that his wife left him because he... No, hold on. You can't laugh because otherwise I'll start laughing. Full House said his wife left him because he was unpleasant to be around. It's actually because of his Catboy headphones that she could not handle, and the fact that she didn't want to mod his Twitch chat and be a Discord server support.
Stop!
Devin's crying now.
That went so much better and farther than I thought the sentence was gonna go.
Now we know the real reason they had to get divorced.
Yeah.
Devin, I just blacked out for a minute.
So, yeah. It's like, oh man. It's funny how when it's like, okay, for some reason they consider it an acceptable compromise to have two children play together in the tournament instead of having like a parent and a child, which seems like a wild way to make an exception to let someone participate. I feel like it kind of defeats the whole purpose. Like, if it's not at least a child and adult, because it's like, you have to learn to get along with adults who don't know how to play video games. I feel like is the general idea of
Full
that
House
kind of
has
thing.
definitely played Among Us. That's
He's
canon.
literally
That's
like
canon.
Glass Onion, like, he is there detecting it out.
He's literally like Moist Critical, canonically.
So when Alison is like, sorry, I'm not going to be able to be there because my grandma's really sick and we don't know if she's going to make it. And Molly's reaction, to her credit, clearly...
It was very good.
Clearly there is a
good.
genuine element of concern for her friend. But at least to my ears, there was also like a 15% element.
It was very well acted.
Of her trying to withhold her own frustration at how this personally inconvenienced her
I will
and
also
her
give her
video
this.
game competition, but
She never said anything to
but
Alison.
because it would be terrible.
Yeah, I know, but I was worried she would.
From an acting perspective, I was very impressed at how I could tell that she felt that way a little bit, but it wasn't just like, but I'm not going to say that because it would be rude. I'm going to be supportive.
Yes.
She did genuinely mostly feel actual concern and express that, but she did still have that little bit of selfishness that she knew was bad and obviously never communicated. That's like, ooh, this sucks for me also that your grandma might die.
Two things. One thing is when her grandma started getting better, I expected her to like jump up and be like, oh, you're gonna come back and be my partner. She was like, oh, does that mean you're gonna be in the competition again? Like, she didn't like get up in her face at any point. Like, it never felt guilt trippy, and I'm very glad about that. Second thing, do you think Pull House chose Bay or Bay at the end of Life is Strange when he played it?
Well, I've never played Life is Strange, so I can't guess.
Do you think he chose to kill a city or...
No, I know that's, save the cheerleader, save the world.
Yeah.
I
assume he platinums every game he plays like you.
Yeah.
He definitely would. He would. He has every console.
Yeah, he has no hobbies.
Do you think he did that thing when the Switch came out where you like licked your game cartridges?
Yeah. I'm just sad he didn't drop his Twitch handle.
He's definitely like coffee and like Power Aid
G
and
Fuel.
like G Fuel. Everyone's like, do you want some coffee? And he's like, no, I'm good. And he has his G Fuel.
He's sitting, he like dyes it black so everyone thinks he takes his coffee black, but it's actually a steaming cup of G Fuel.
We need to go back and review that artwork from the last episode with him and Molly, because he was actually sitting in a gamer chair.
He's sitting in a DX Racer chair in his detective office.
Yeah. I'm coming up with all these jokes as you're talking, and I'm being so
I'm
funny.
picturing the cat ear headphones, but he's using them like when someone's like tapping a phone line and they have the cassette recorder and they like lean in with like the headphone on one ear, but it's like a pink cat ear headphone.
I think that he has people he plays with online, like competitive games with on teams, and it's just like such a solid team. Like he finds the best players, and he's never met any of these people in real life, and they only use their gamer tags. And one of the people on his team is Jillian, and neither of them know.
Let's go! Yes. Yeah. So as soon as he entered the episode, obviously we knew he was going to be in there, but still I was very excited. Like, yes, MLG Esports Pro, Don Polehouse in the game. We've all been new.
And like I said, I was playing video games as I was listening to this on very hard settings and difficulties and like challenge modes, which is the way you can only listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Legally.
It only progresses if you start playing. If you pause, then the audio like winds down.
The audio like becomes like distorted.
This comment is so much funnier in retrospect, knowing that Polehouse plays a lot of video games now. But I really like the first time that we see them playing this game. Molly treats Polehouse like he's this clueless old guy who doesn't know how to play these newfangled video games, because she's like describing the genre and gameplay in the most confusing way. She's like, we're gonna wait here until the elephant breaks down the wall and then we break into the jungle. And he's like, okay, do we get a gun or a sword? She's like, no, idiot, it's not that kind of game. We have to solve puzzles. And he's like, okay, well, we're in a library, let's look for clues, read the signs on the wall. She's like, ugh, Gramps, it's not that kind of game. Make up your mind, Molly. He's like really adapting to the way you're describing things in actual...
She's like, okay, there's gonna be like destruction, and he's like, okay, he's thinking like through his like FPS knowledge.
He's like, okay, are we gonna have ranged combat or is it melee based? And she was like, no, we're doing puzzles.
And she's like, we're doing puzzle. And he's like, okay, I just finished replaying like Mist and Riven last night.
Let's look for environmental clues. And she's like, stop paying attention to things. This isn't Endless Runner. This is just Jungle Run.
And he's like, okay, I've played Temple Run on my phone back when that came out. And she's like, no, you have to jump here. And he's like, okay, I'm really good at Flappy Bird. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah, it was really funny to me that she's like, you know, because it's playing on this idea of like, old people aren't going to understand anything. Where it's like, oh, he came in and you just like jumped in place and crouched instead of running because you can't remember the buttons.
Literally that elderly lady who also plays like Call of Duty in her free time.
Someone in Sheep's chat like 2 streams ago, they came in, they rated, and they were like, we were playing Overwatch and we just played against Overwatch Grandma. Like we were in a match against her for real.
So
we're like,
exciting.
it was very cool.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Like she's literally twitch.tv/grandma is her,
that's awesome.
is her handle, and they played against her, so that was pretty cool. Anyways, yeah, it's like complete Polehouse from a gaming perspective is making completely reasonable points as wrapped up in a way that makes him seem like old and senile. Also, like not getting the controls also completely makes sense because like handheld VR controls are like so different than a normal controller, where it's like, yeah, grab like an ergonomic hand grip, and like there's like finger trigger buttons for each finger, and then like thumb slide pads, and like it's like, yeah, it's non-intuitive. It's like he probably would have gotten it a lot better if he had like a normal like Xbox controller.
Polehouse's wife divorced him.
Or maybe he was getting it wrong because he plays Nintendo all the time, so it'd B and A switched around in his mind.
I keep on saying divorced as if she is still alive. She died. Polehouse's wife divorced. I'm getting just
in the metaphysical sense.
Yeah, divorced him because despite agreeing in their wedding vows, she refused to call him her Discord kitten.
I mean, obviously, all these comments are through the filter of not knowing that he reveals he plays games at the end. But after the first time, he was very frustrated after like the first couple times, especially because he got stomped to death by an elephant in VR, which obviously
that sounds very traumatic.
VR deaths can be very shocking. It's very much the modern equivalent of like I'm watching the movie of the train coming towards the camera, right? You know, it's very all encompassing. And the fact that he went right back into it, and their first session, he went through 63 attempts at the game, right?
He's very persistent.
I was really proud of him for agreeing to this in the first place and being like, oh, and not being like, oh, this is silly and I don't want to do this. And then for really genuinely giving his best shot, trying his best, and not giving up after his first-person traumatic death that he experienced. Like, he's literally like, I thought you said there wasn't, like, smashing and violent death. She's like, I said we can't cause violent deaths.
I always have a ton of respect for people who try out new experiences, who are, like, very much out of their wheelhouse. So, like, yeah, good for him. And also, it's
just, like, you could clearly tell he was very frustrated by it, and the fact that he didn't rage quit. Literally.
I know a lot of people who have played video games before who are older adults who don't understand and then leave the room immediately, like our dad.
Nah.
And then it's not for everybody.
If I was Polehouse, like I was surprised when she was like, yeah, some old man built it or something. I don't know, but he's from town.
To be fair, Wit's like hundreds of years old.
I was like, if I was Polehouse, I would be flabbergasted that my child who lives in Odyssey does not know who John Avery Whittaker is. Like, I would come down hard on them for not immediately knowing it was Wit.
She's too busy spending all of her time on TikTok to go to Wit's End.
Like, at first when Molly is like, ignore these signs, they don't mean anything. Like, if it was any other kid in Odyssey, I would be criticizing them for like, you know that Wit made this game. Obviously, it's not just some runner platformer that's for fun. Like, obviously, there has to be some deeper meaning and a spiritual whole thing, and there's more to it than that. Like, Polehouse is obviously trying to sniff out, but she did make it clear that she doesn't really know who Wit is. She hasn't been to Wit's End, and so I'm like, okay, she definitely gets a clean pass at not realizing.
I was just imagining, like, Jason seeing this and being like,
I know, I thought about the arcade games. And I'm like, obviously, there's more to it than this. Wit isn't just going to be like, here, let's make
with those ones, it was Bible stories that are doing other things. And this is, like, video games that incorporate, like, Bible elements, which is Wit's specialty.
Yeah.
So, it's not the same thing, but it is still fun to imagine Jason seeing that and just going, like,
come on. We had a really sweet chunk of this episode, like you touched on, and I wasn't expecting it to get that like vulnerable for Polehouse.
Yes, I think
it was really surprising.
This episode, the last one with Molly, and then the one where Buck almost runs away, and he and Polehouse have the talk at the end, and then he like calls up his mom.
Yeah.
I love Polehouse episodes. They're so good. He's a good character.
Maybe the one with Buck, but like this, otherwise this is like far and away stands out from everything else in terms of like, you know, I was thinking like, oh, I'm surprised that he's agreeing to this, but it's nice that he wants to do it because it's his granddaughter. And he really opens up about like, I know this is frustrating because you miss your dad and he's dead. They
got like so much more serious, like fast, and I wasn't expecting it because it was like the gamer dad was talking to him, and the gamer dad leaves, and he's like, "Listen, I know your dad died," and I was like, "Whoa!"
Based on the beginning of this episode, I didn't expect it to take such a like sixth inning turn into like,
or the cover art with like the elephant like running
the gorilla, smashing through the wall, being like, "Hey, listen, you know, I have not done a great job at being there for you, and I know that this was a way that you connected with your dad, and this is really making you think about him, especially since there's a lot of other dads here playing with their kids, and there's a lot of emotional vulnerability for you, but when your dad died, your mom came to me and was like..."
In a dream.
And said that I'm pregnant with Jesus.
Oh, no.
Said that you really need to step it up and get your game together. You need to be
and there for her. And he said, "Good thing I'm a gamer," and he turned his baseball cap.
Time to start grinding. You need to be there for her and do better. and I still have not done as good a job at that as I should have, but I'm trying, and that's what I'm doing right here, and thank you for letting me play games with you. And I was like...
And like what you said before, he's clearly like made such a more concentrated effort from the first Molly episode.
Yeah.
And like you can see that their relationship like really has progressed.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't immediate,
he's, like,
because
so much more open.
He's like, when that happened, I was like, it's time to change. And then I thought back to Fishing for Gold, where he's like, what are you doing in my office? I mean, it was all very like jokey and stuff.
Yeah, it was really cute.
But he's like, you better better not let anyone in this building know that you're related to me. Now get out of here, you scoundrel.
He like puts handcuffs on her and then he leads her like out of the building and he's like, no one can know.
Literally, it's like very much like my parent needs to drop me off around the corner for school. Like,
except for with a child.
Yeah. It was really good. We're really cracking open this emotional nut lately of his brain and getting to all the gooey, chewy emotions inside of it. Mm-hmm. And he didn't give up on helping Molly with this, and I really respect that. Alison's dad goes up. She shows up. He's so cringe guy, like we talked about already, and it's really funny given that he was also heavily talked about in the last episode, the only 2 episodes that Alison and Molly have been in, and he is not
There's
painting...
There's so much to say
He is
about
not
him.
painting a good portrait of himself so far.
The
it's
worst.
Not flattering. I really liked how Pool House, once they finally get in there, and he's like, Molly, please just like trust me on this one. Listen, I have ideas. Listen, I don't... He's seeing all these signs, and he's like, I don't know what's in the Bible, but I know that Whit made this. And there's a bunch of like, there's like words around
there
that
were
mean
some
something.
Things that like, he was like, I don't know what this means, and I thought they were like pretty common knowledge things, like some of them.
They're like common Christian knowledge, but I feel like if you weren't raised in church, there's a decent chance you wouldn't recognize them. I feel like.
Okay.
I mean, I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but the point is...
One was like, the road is like long and narrow.
There's a wide and narrow road, yeah, stuff like that.
And one was like, get thee behind me, which
I feel like that phrase at least is like, oh, yeah. You understand.
And you were getting a haircut behind me, and I was like,
yes,
get thee behind me, demon, after you. Like, good omens.
I just thought it was so funny that it wasn't the usual case of a Bible bull, like, oh, I see these verses, I know that's from the Bible, and I know it off the top of my head and in my heart, or I can look it up because I knew it's from the Bible.
Yeah, it's a good thing they checked the footnotes, because they're like, oh, this word means this, which means rock, which means we need to get behind the rock, and I was like, okay.
Very funny that Paul House only connected it to the Bible because he's like, well, Whit made this, so what else would it be?
Yeah,
obviously it's a Bible.
True. He's like, I know how to read people because I'm a cop.
Very fortunate that Whit had like tabbed out all of the all of the passages and written the words that were on the signs on the tab so that like you could immediately jump to it.
It was actually one of those stupid little literacy test things that you have in school where you like read the thing and then you have to answer questions. It was
made very accessible to people who don't know the Bible, which makes sense because he was like doing this for a general school competition, so it's like, not a Bible.
Time does not separate the church and state.
Only the Christians will win this game, and the atheists who are really dedicated to reading the Bible to analyze it and pick it apart. So yeah, I thought that was really funny that they're like, he just put it together because it's Whit, so like what else would it be instead of the usual like, aha, I recognize this from the Bible. Mm-hmm. And then the end reveal, Pool House was a gamer the whole time. I was like, when we were going through the first time, I was like, what kind of clues are these signs supposed to be giving? Because clearly it's a Bible thing, but is it like you crouch and then you can like crouch clip through this tree, or is it like you like input the Konami code and then you skip to the end, or is it just like, hey, here's the secret hint on how to get through the actual puzzle without doing any like glitch skips? And it was kind of a mixture of those.
People who are on Pool House's elite e-gaming, like esports team. Him, Jillian, Jason. Jillian and Jason low-key flirt over the chat, but neither of them know it's the other person, and everyone's like, stop. Wellington, because he loves games.
Lives in a different time zone. Which, I mean, obviously...
Lots of people do that.
I'm just saying,
it's
funny,
zones.
The odds that his gaming group is 3 people in Odyssey and 1 person in Alaska.
Yeah. And, because Wellington is canonically, like, really into games.
I thought
And
you said canonically a gamer.
Yeah, I dare to say he's canonically a gamer.
Would you? Obviously, you would dare to say that. There's not much you wouldn't dare to say about Wellington.
And I'm so bold when it comes to my Wellington takes.
Yeah.
And those are the only people I can think of right now who would be on the elite team.
It's like Pull House, Jillian, Jason, and Jace Mouse.
And Wellington. Wellington means...
There's no children on this team.
There's no children. There can be one child. It can be, like...
I like the idea of Jillian and Jason both gaming during work hours, but not knowing that the other person's doing that, because it strikes a very...
We could put Nelson on the team.
I thought of Nelson. It
Yeah,
has a very,
Nelson
like,
can be on the team.
The Duchess refuses, or whatever. The Duchess... What is
the Duchess approves.
The opposite of what I said.
Yeah.
It's very The Duchess approves, where it's like Whit and Jason...
Kids! Get the remote! Kids!
Whit and Jason in opposite ends of the house, like Jillian and Jason's like, hey, I need to go check stuff out back, and Jillian's like, okay, I need to go run an errand, and then they both separately go, and they're like, oh, good, I made it just in time for my match with my gaming
They come into work the next morning, they have, like, huge bags under their eyes, like, both of them, and they just assume,
so they're both using, like, voice modulators and
chat? Yeah, or just typing.
Okay, that's fair.
Jason is, like, I think it'd be funny if Jillian...
They're both sweaty PC gamers.
I could see Jillian actually figuring out who every single person in the call is.
Well, she IP traced them.
Yeah, she IP traced them, and then she's like, oh, it's Jason. Or she joined in the first place because Jason was on there. And then it was one of those things where it was like, I need to be better.
She IP traced, but assumed it must be Whit.
Yeah. And that'd
be weird. I was going to say they were flirting, so let's not go that way. What if she was flirting and it turned out it was Whit and she thought it was Jason?
No! Anyway, talk about the thingy.
Yes. It took me about a dozen attempts, maybe 24 attempts to actually get the video to play, where there's audio and video at the same time, but only one copy of the audio playing, because the new version of the website is so broken.
Is Bob a gamer?
No, they didn't do Gamer Bob.
They didn't talk about being a gamer in this?
Well, so they have a interview with the indie game dev, and he talks about, like, the games he's made.
What games did he make?
I mean, nothing that I assume you would have heard of, nothing I heard of. It was a lot of, like, mobile games and things like that.
Oh, okay. He's like, I make pay-to-wins.
Yeah. And he talked about, like, how people can learn easy online to get a handle on coding in different languages, programming, engines available to them, etc. He's like, Unity, that's free. And I'm like, ooh, this aged poorly over the last year.
I recognize the name Unity. Something bad happened.
Yeah, like 6 months ago, they're like, hey, you know how half the games in the world are based on our engine and it's free to use?
Is that the people who make Unreal? Or
no. Unity and Unreal are different engines, I believe.
What has been made using Unity that I would recognize?
I don't know, probably most games. Google it.
Okay.
They were like, we are going to start charging game devs a fee for every installation of a game that happens, which means, like,
that's insane.
For big game, it's like, if you have, like, 10,000 people have installed your game, it's like, great, you need to pay us $20 for each person. I don't think it's that much.
Like, all your revenue, basically.
Yeah, so for, like, it's huge amounts of money.
If your game didn't cost $20, you'd be losing money.
Yeah, for huge developers, it's like a huge chunk of profits, and it's insane. For indie developers, it's literally like, oh, we can't do this. It doesn't come into effect till next year, but unless it changes, which it still hasn't, Cult of the Lamb, which I'm sure you've heard of,
yes,
I know going to be permanently pulled from, like, the Steam store because they cannot afford to pay that fee. So when it goes into effect, you will no longer be able to purchase the game, and they're just going to have to get rid of it being available on the market, which is terrible, horrific, extremely sad for a great game that is widely acclaimed. And
I've only heard good things about that game. I haven't played it.
We cannot afford to pay this, and so we're going to have to stop selling the game when this comes into effect unless Unity
That
changes
sucks.
it.
I know a lot of people love that game.
It's absolutely terrible. And so I thought it was funny that, obviously this came out in January. His film before that, he was like, yeah, Unreal, and you can animate things in Blender. Unity, that's free. And I was like, oh no. They took a bunch of kids who were aged like 5 to 10-ish and put them into a room one at a time where they had like an Atari with Pong, and they're like, let's see if they can figure it out and what they think of it.
Kids should be able to figure out how Pong works.
And I really liked it because they did figure it out. Like they sat down in front of it.
Pong is literally like the most intuitive game thing ever.
Well, I liked it because I feel like the typical like spin on that kind of thing is going to be like kids, it's like memes where it's like kids don't understand what this thing is, and it's a picture of like a cassette tape
it's
or
like
whatever.
That thing where like Ellen would take like teenagers and try and get them to read a map.
Yeah.
Like, and figure out how to use like certain things
Exactly.
Live on her show, and then make fun of them for not knowing it because they don't need to use that thing anymore.
That's what
and I've never come into contact with it, and it just kind of sucks.
That's what I was worried this was going to come off as.
I don't like that kind of stuff.
And it didn't, which made me really happy, especially because, like I said, some of the kids were like maybe like late elementary school, middle schoolish age.
Lots of them will know what ping pong is, like in a video game.
Some of them were like 5 or even like 4, like they were very young. And I don't know if you've seen the controller for Pong before.
I assume it's just like a normal joystick.
That's what I was expecting. It's not even that. It is like it is a rectangle, and it has a dial in the middle, and you just rotate the dial.
Oh, okay.
It is literally that simple. You just twist it one way to like move it down, and the other way to move it up.
So it's like you're like playing games when you have like an iPod Nano, and you
literally
just, like,
it's like you can hit enter and you can rotate the wheel.
Yeah,
and
that's all you can do.
Which makes sense. It's like you don't need a lot of controls, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, that is different enough from a modern control. I could see like obviously there's not a lot you can do with it, so it should be pretty quick to figure out. But I did like that, the kids would like sit down and be like, huh, is this a controller? But then, they basically all immediately, after like 5 seconds of confusion, they're like, okay, I figured it out. They see the ball moving, they hit it, and then, they start getting into it. And then they ask them like, what did you think of it? And answers varied, but the general consensus was like, yeah, it was fun.
It's Pong.
Yeah, I would get bored of it pretty quickly, but if it was the only thing you had, like, I would make do, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, one kid was like...
That's all you can say about Pong.
One kid is like, yeah, I get bored after, like, 3 hours, and another kid was like, yeah, I think I could get pretty good at it if I played it for, like, 5 years.
But
they're also kids, so they're...
that.
It's like... realistic.
Wait, how old was that kid? Like, what's their knowledge of like?
But that's what I'm saying. Also, their concept of time.
Like, if that was like a 4-year-old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like, if a like 6-year-old is like, yeah, I could play for 5 years, and I get pretty good at it. It's like they're young enough that their sense of time is already completely meaningless, and so I thought it was really charming. But yeah, I was really glad that it wasn't just the like, look at these dumb kids can't figure out real technology because they're babies.
That's good.
I liked it that it was like, oh yeah, kids understand technology, so they don't know how to use it, but they sat there for 5 seconds and then they figured it out.
This is my hot take. If someone doesn't understand something and you have the chance to learn how it works, and like if you know how it works and you have the chance to teach them how it works, teach them how to make it work instead of using, if you have a specific amount of allotted time, instead of making fun of them, why don't you just frigging teach them how to do it?
Because that doesn't get clicks, Victoria. It doesn't get clicks and likes.
Dumb.
It's funny because even saying the word clicks implies people using a mouse instead. It should be taps because people are only on only on them phones.
Be respectful to people. Be respectful to their intelligence. If you make fun of something that someone doesn't understand in a way and like hurt their feelings, they're not going to want to spend time around you anymore.
I will say this especially. We've observed in the last 20, 30 years that the rapid development of technology has given kids growing up like a really incredible skill at like learning and adapting to new technology, new software, stuff like that really quickly. But currently we are hitting an era where the like monopolization of most spheres of technology has, especially with the advent of like mobile overtaking desktop stuff, has really locked into like a lack of user control over software combined with like the Internet of Things, where it's like, yeah, I need my dog food feeder and my car locks and my light bulbs all attached to the internet, with no analog controls for them. Combining that with like everything being done through apps, where it's like I have no root control, I can't access permissions, I can't right click on things or like look at the HTML of a website, saving files and stuff. Everything I do is in the cloud. I don't have any local storage. The reason that companies keep pushing stuff in this direction is that it takes away control from the user. It just gives them like, here's a very straightforward user experience, and you'll only use it the way that we want you to. You can't torrent things, you can't jailbreak things. We don't want you to be able to like hack or understand how anything works, because we only want you to use it like under the ways that we have deigned to do it. And obviously there are still plenty of other ways to use technology, but like the most mainstream core, most used versions of technology are continuing to move more and more in this direction. And it's scary sometimes to hear stories of like kids growing up in like high school age now, hearing accounts from teachers, realizing like, oh, we're starting to get a reverting back of kids' understanding of how computers work, because things are moving into like so user friendly and you don't need to understand it to use it, that growing up only with iPads and iPhones and Android and stuff, that it's like, oh, they don't understand that files are stored in structures of like folders that are like in a tree of locations, things like that anymore, or like how to open command prompt and stuff like that. And obviously this is a generalization. There are plenty of kids who still learn that, and I think that's something that's great about like
kids love learning coding.
Gaming.
They find it so
gaming makes that really accessible, because you know what I would say the number one way that kids learn like how to do stuff on a PC is modding Minecraft and Fortnite and you know all sorts of different games.
Bunch of things.
Modding games on
modding
PC.
Communities are like the most creative people.
Modding games on PC, like not even creating mods, but just installing mods involves like, okay, I need to look where are my save files stored in Steam? Where are the Steam files, so I can go in because I need to change or add files into directories and stuff like that.
People playing emulators.
So there's exactly emulators. Another great example. But the point is, obviously, like any generation, there are still people around who know how to do that stuff. But me not trying to sound like, but kids these days, they're not knowing as much. There does seem to be a genuine trend which is driven by what companies are trying to force people into, that is causing kids, as a result, to starting to go back to understand less about how technology actually works and how to use it in a way outside of like the strict narrow vision of what the companies want you to be doing with it. And that is concerning, because it's good to be able to understand how things work and understand how to circumvent like those narrow visions of like DRM and things that like how companies want to lock you into, like the designed serviceability, like, you know, non-serviceable by customers things and things like that, like your ability to mod and repair your PC, to troubleshoot your own software, to open websites where you get pop-up blockers coming in and being like, oh, I can install ad block extensions instead of just putting up with ads, things like that.
What does DRM stand for?
It's not district. It's like directive something restricted media. Like region locked. Yeah, stuff? It's basically it's things so that you can't share it with other people or cannot be shared outside of like certain regions.
Okay. What do you rate this episode?
I am going to give this episode a 4.8 out of 5. It was a really good episode. I really am glad that they brought Molly and Alison back. I love Whole House in this episode. I love that he turned out to be a gamer. I love that he expressed his emotions so openly and honestly to Molly in a way that I was not expecting. He like really got vulnerable about like himself and his relationship with his daughter, his granddaughter, his son-in-law. I loved that we got to see like Whit doing more tweaks on his technology in ways that are interacting with the community. I thought all the like the fun gamer stuff and the fact that, you know, all this stuff with Full House, I thought that was fun. And I really liked, like you pointed out to me the other day, the theme is very similar to Fishing for Gold, where it's like, hey, respect your grandparents, listen to them.
They could have good stories. That was another part of the theme.
Yeah.
Like, they can teach you stuff.
Exactly. He knows things and he has skills and talents. So he has valuable insight, and also, cherish the time that you spend with him.
And he has, like, every single issue of all the Nintendo Directs and, like, all the Nintendo Power Hours memorized. So, like, he got that gamer knowledge. He has a Power Glove, for sure.
It's very old.
That was, like, what he used to propose.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's like when he was, like, out throwing hands with thugs on the street, and he's like, I don't need brass knuckles. For a Nintendo Power Glove swinging for your teeth.
He kept himself out of trouble growing up because he was spending too much time playing that game where you're racing using
Mario Kart.
No, it's like with the Power Glove.
Okay.
You like you control it with your hand. The car. I'm gonna give it a 4. It was good, but it wasn't Gloobers. That's all I have to say.
Literally, while she was listening to the episode, Victoria kept on comparing it to Gloobers.
No, I didn't.
I feel like you made at least 2 mentions of Gloobers.
Like 1 mention of Gloobers. At most.
Okay. You made more today.
No. Wait, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really good, but I kind of wish I was listening to Gloobers right now.
There wasn't enough goofy gibberish voices for you.
This episode did not have Jared or Dwayne.
The Rock Johnson, yeah.
Dwight. And it didn't have Master Brain. And it didn't have that old young man.
Yes, sir, young man.
And it didn't have the tickling. And it didn't have scheming from Eugene. So, what's the point? 0 out of 10.
Well, I can't argue with that. So, final thing we need to talk about is run over some quick predictions for album 75 so that next episode we can finally start talking about the actual album. So let's go on back to that right now. Okay, talking about predictions for album 75.
5-minute predictions, so we don't talk too long about something that's already been released.
Like we do every time. I think 72 hours or whatever was like album 73. That was like the first time in like a decade that we've done predictions before the album was released.
And we've never talked too long about it ever. Okay, let's
Anyways,
look at the
this
album cover.
It's called The Best Is Yet to Come. Okay, we're looking at the cover first.
I saw very briefly what this cover looked like, so I wanted to talk about it. Eugene, what does it mean? What does it mean that he's here? It says the best is yet to come. I'm so scared. I don't know if that means they're sending him away.
I imagine so.
Or if he's
Bernard?
Staying. Oh, wait, that is... What? Wait.
Okay, that's weird. Anyways,
What?
Eugene and Katrina and Buck are here. And Buck is looking... Oh, he has a deer phone case. That's cute.
That's kind of cute. Connie looks sad. I'm scared. I don't want them to leave.
I have to assume that they're sending off Eugene.
Oh, I don't want him to go.
Because I'll say this. There's a 4-parter in this album of 6 episodes.
Frick, I want to listen to the whole thing!
Which means there's 3 unique episodes in here.
There's gotta be...
So the 3 things we get at the bottom of this art, that's it. Forgiveness,
There's
purpose.
gotta be, like, a new VA for Eugene. Unless it says God's Gift of Memories. Is it just a 4-part clip show? With just, like, them talking around Eugene being there and then, like, re-editing Will's voice clips? Because there's no way they would have, like, written these episodes and had them ready to go and had them recorded.
Oh, yeah, because you would need to send Eugene off if there was a 4-parter about Eugene leaving.
Yeah.
Unless they recorded it in advance, that's true.
I don't think they would have recorded it in advance.
Man, how long since Katrina's been on an album cover?
A bit.
Yeah, or Bernard. That's weird, but I guess it goes to
Is
show
that
just because
actually Bernard, or is this a
Tom
trap?
died silently does not mean that Bernard did. I mean, they did put Dave Madden in the Pinocchio episode with like one line, even though
They
it was an
did.
old line.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but it is Bernard. That's his jacket and his hat.
The hat looks kind of like goggles by the way it's obscured. He's become a time traveler, and that is how he's here.
That makes sense. Should we read the description for the album?
Yeah, I'm scared. Hold my hand virtually.
Everything has led to this moment.
Oh,
A new technology created by Odyssey's own Eugene Meltzner could change medical science as we know it.
No, this killed Whit last time we did it. We can't do. Eugene went to hell and Whit died. We can't.
Oh, I was gonna say that
That's how they write off Eugene. He goes to heaven because they do the healing program again.
He's done mind control, and they're gonna do it on Jason.
Not the healing program. Like
third album.
Your loved one.
Third album in a row, we're gonna do unethical mind control.
We can't keep doing this. They can't keep getting away with it.
This new creation would improve the lives of thousands, even millions.
Would it though?
But Eugene is the only one who can guide his work into the future. The four-part adventure, The Best Is Yet to Come, presents an incredibly difficult decision for the Meltzner family, with implications for their friends and the rest of the world.
Do you think there's any chance they could do Eugene and Katrina are leaving, but Buck is staying? Because I feel like if they just adopted him,
that would be wild. Yeah, I don't think they would do that. Do you think? I mean, they've been talking about
Buck is like one of the favorite characters in the show right now.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing they're gonna let him
And they have
go.
so much stuff with Jules still to do, and him.
And
they just started dating in the last episode of the album.
And it felt like they were building up to Buck becoming a Christian too, which they wouldn't do in this episode.
Which is why we've talked about how they wouldn't get rid of Eugene, like as a written off explicitly character.
Do you think they're gonna like psych out Eugene leaving, and
I
then
think
it's
that's
like,
what's gonna
nah,
happen.
we're gonna stay? Because I feel like that's what they have to do.
Although I like how
I feel very confident in saying this. If it is a new voice actor for Eugene, they are not leaving.
Yes.
But I feel like...
I mean, they did for Bart for one episode, to be fair.
I feel like they're going to psych out what's going to happen, and they're going to, like, tease us with Eugene just not appearing for the first couple bits, and they're going to drag it out. They're going to be like,
it's going to be like Plan B.
And it's like, yeah, where it's like, have you seen Eugene? Or like, oh, Eugene's over here. And Connie's like, I've got to talk to Eugene. And they're going to torture that poor girl again, like they did in Welcome Home. Because I've never emotionally moved past Welcome Home. And then they did that to her again when Mitch was leaving and she needed to talk to Whit. Every single time, I can't find anyone to talk to when I really need to talk to someone. Those episodes run through my head, and it makes me sadder than ever.
To be fair, it happened to you. It happened to Eugene when Whit left for the Middle East, and he just waved to him on the plane. And then it happened to Connie when he came back.
I guess it happened to Eugene every time he tried to find a living relative too. But like,
boo.
He got there in the end.
I think so. Here's the thing. I don't think they can write Buck out of the show.
I don't either.
With the way things are right now. And
I'm calling your bluff, Odyssey.
While I think...
I'm scared now that I said that.
I think that they could passively have Eugene fade, like they have for the last year, have him be mentioned. He's present, but he's not in the show. I don't think they could have him explicitly leave Odyssey with Katrina and have Buck stay behind, because that would be bonkers. I don't think he would leave Katrina behind either.
I think that, like, if you... Okay, so, like, what they did with Wooten and Penny's wedding, where it was like, we're constantly going to bring this up because we're leading to something big. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's what they did with Eugene here. I mean, it definitely is, because what we've been hearing about is like, oh, he's really busy with this college thing, and now we're seeing what that thing is.
Yeah, but this all makes me feel like
But
They're
like,
not
is this
gonna send
also
him
going to
away.
play into Novacom coming back recently?
Well, that's why I'm saying the medical device, because it's like we just had a whole thing with Novacom and like Dr. Graham worked on this thing.
Is Eugene going to
and the
be like,
chairman's
they're
here.
going to find me, I got to go into hiding again? Like, we
Eugene's
just
like,
did this
finally,
20 years ago.
Eugene's like, finally, I've had a big medical breakthrough in my research that wasn't funded by Novacom.
And then it's like the gif where it's like, thought you'd seen the last of me, and it's like Novacom walking back into Eugene's
And then Eugene
life.
does his
or
like
the text messages of like this unethical science company who I presume dead for like 30 years just texted me this. It's like, I lived.
It would be very funny if this is how Novacom made their presence known, is Eugene just had a big medical discovery. We haven't seen him in a while because he's been doing medical research at the college, but he's finally had a breakthrough.
Eugene like
and
has
then
Buck
has to marry Jules, and they elope. They have an eloped marriage.
And Eugene's deathbed.
No.
But and then Katrina goes crazy during their wedding, which Connie has a horrible time setting up.
Okay, but anyway. Anyways, back to legit predictions. All of the things that we've said very much lead to the conclusion that the bluff will be called and Eugene is not going to leave Odyssey, because
I'm calling their bluff. I
don't
believe you, Odyssey.
Yeah, that's literally what they did for the end of an era, was like the trilogy of Eugene going to leave Odyssey, and then in the end, oh, surprise, Leonard and Everett are leaving, but Eugene's going to stay here.
Yeah.
And this feels like the same thing again, but I do like the fact that, as far as this description leads us to believe, Eugene deciding to stay with his friends and family in Odyssey does mean he's doing it at the cost of improving the lives medically of thousands, even millions of people, which...
You know what? I'll say it. I'm fine with that.
Does feel like a very Life is
I want him
Strange
to
kind
stay.
of move.
I don't want him to leave.
A Life is Strange or The Last of Us kind of move ethically.
Yeah. And I said, let them die. I want him to stay.
So that's interesting. Here's my only other thought is Eugene decides to stay, but in a freak accident with the helium tank attached to his medical device, it alters his voice irreparably, and that's how Eugene gets a new voice.
What if they like, I got Inspector
terrible
Gadget's mixed up, and I was gonna say, what if like he's in a car and then a bowling ball flies in the air and lands on him, and then his voice gets all scratchy, and then I remembered he doesn't have a scratchy voice in the movie. It hits his hand, and that's how he's a claw. He just generally has a scratchy voice in the show.
Yes.
I created my own continuity for Inspector Gadget.
And there's a Yahoo billboard.
I opened a DVD that was just like, I don't even remember what it was, a random adult DVD, I believe. And just to check if the DVD was in it.
Like adult DVD?
Like not in the kids section of the library.
Okay.
Like there's the kids DVDs and the adults DVDs.
Gotcha.
Not like explicit
mature
material or anything. Yes. But I opened, because every time we get a disc in, the discs go behind the counter and the empty cases go on the shelves because people would steal the discs. So we put the discs in when people are about to take them out. Yeah. And then we, when we get the discs, like the DVD cases back, we check that the discs are there, and then we put them back in like our vault behind the counter. But the thing is, I opened
in the Disney vault.
Adults in the Disney vault. We put them back in the Disney vault, and then where they're stored for 30 years. And then if you're lucky, you might be able to check it out, or you can buy it for $30.
But the joke here is you
tax.
are actually putting Disney movies in this vault.
Yes. But I opened this adult DVD, and then on like the little tab thingies where you like slide the paper in.
The insert, yeah.
I saw the insert. I saw Inspector Gadget, and I was like, what? And then I was thinking, is this just an ad for Inspector Gadget? And then I looked down and I saw like all the names of all the different chapters in the movie for Inspector Gadget, and I was like, okay, I guess this just fell out when someone had this movie and
Was
Inspector
the movie
Gadget out.
Inspector Gadget?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It was like, let's say it was The Matrix.
Schrodinger's list.
And,
Schindler's List.
Schrodinger's List. We don't know if there's a list or not. We think they're okay, but we're
Did
not
they get
sure.
out or not?
Oh no. Anyway, I put the thing back in the Inspector Gadget DVD. But wow, you sure said that. You sure said that. Are you good? You're very red. You look like you're crying. Don't cry.
Anyways, yeah, I think there's some
Let's talk about Eugene.
I think there's some sulfur dioxide / helium mix that it happens at the same time, and Eugene stays, but his voice is changed irrevocably.
Yes.
Anyways, the rest of the description.
He actually turns into a robot fully.
Meanwhile, in Two's Company, Four's a Crowd, they just say all of the episode names in the description because there's only 3 of them, and they say which episodes are which. So that kind of takes that out of the thing.
Well, I guess we won't be doing predictions.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I think the most important part of predictions we just did.
Yeah, that's true.
Eugene's hand is going to get crushed by a bowling ball.
Yeah,
meanwhile,
he'll have a claw hand.
Yeah, and he plays the ukulele with it. Meanwhile,
it sounds so bad, but he still wins American Idol somehow anyway.
Exactly. In Two's Company,
as long as Talia doesn't win. Not Talia. Talia's.
Mm-hmm.
Talia's not.
Yeah, she's a Bassett. But Tamika, she's a Washington. Anyways, Two's Company, Four's a Crowd. Suzu Rydell pulls Emily Jones into a mystery where the clues contradict themselves. Will they find a way to work together and solve a bizarre case? And finally, a mysterious phone call gives Penny Bassett an opportunity to bring closure to a dark chapter from her past. Though the process comes with its own painful revelations. Don't miss As Far As It Depends on Me. Past, present, and future collide at a critical turning point.
Still going.
This summer, we and our friends in Odyssey will realize that despite difficult times, the best is yet to come.
I am so tired. I can't remember Talia's dad's name, and this is the most horrifying experience of my life.
I'm sorry, are you talking about Wellington Bassett?
I'm so tired right now, and my glasses keep
It's been
snapping,
like 10 minutes since you last talked about it.
It's very distracting, and I think my soul is leaving my body.
Yeah, that's how I also feel due to needing to eat dinner. Anyways, obviously...
Okay, can I just say, the fact that Maury's name wasn't mentioned, he's definitely the one behind the case, and they're trying to get Emily back into investigating.
Two's a Company, Four's a Crowd makes me feel like this is going to be the return of EMTC or CEMT or whatever.
It definitely
CEMS.
is.
Yeah, CEMS.
And then maybe we'll get to see that one sketchy kid that was like, I'll destroy your lives, and then never showed up again for like 3 years.
Maury 2.
Maury 2.
Penny Bassett.
2 Maury. Oh, Maury.
Dark chapter from her past, I can only assume. Devon's coming back.
She killed someone.
And Devon's coming back.
She killed Devon. Devon's dead.
Yep. Happens to the best of us. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be end of an era kind of thing where it's going to be a will they, won't they, and we're calling their bluff. They're going to make it seem like Eugene's going to leave, and in the end, he's going to decide. I thought you meant
about Penny and Devon for a second. No. I was going to say she's married.
No, because we're talking about predictions. I'm summarizing what we decided on. I think Eugene is going to end up staying, and they're going to be like, you know what? We have someone else who can develop this medical device, and it's Dan Ysidro.
I think they're going to name someone else to develop the medical device.
And it will be
someone who's secretly working for Novacom, and that will lead into the Novacom.
Literally, as I said it as a joke, I was like, oh, they are going to hand it off to someone. They're like, here, I'll give it to you, person who I trust. Someone who we know in the show, Bernard Walton, who actually works for Novacom.
It's going to be Maud. But she doesn't understand it. She somehow
Yes,
fixes
Maud,
it and distributes it, yet not understanding a single
No,
thing that's
she figures
happening.
it out because she knows that, yes, Maud, it is like that time Uncle Pete got kicked by a cow.
Oh, that's true. She has experience to draw upon. She puts that in her resume.
Yeah. So
Right
that's what's going to
underneath
happen in
chicken
this album
mascot.
75 with episodes 964 through 969. So the order is, as far as it depends on me, the Penny episode to premiere, and then Two's a Company, Three's a Crowd, and then it ends with the four-parter, The Best Is Yet to Come. So
And that's it.
that's it.
I'm going to start listening to him tomorrow. I'm not going to listen past part 1 of
Good.
the four-parter, but...
Uh-huh. All right.
Okay. Leave.
We'll turn back to Old Devin and Victoria to wrap up this episode, so they know what's happening next time, which will presumably, obviously, is going to be in the first 2 episodes of this. But
oh, I thought you were going to say presumably, obviously, be recorded 5 years from now. Okay, bye, guys. Go talk to the other versions of us.